This is shocker or nerve power switch repair, which involves desoldering the switch located here, desoldering it, taking a new switch and soldering that. This is pretty easy to do if you know how to solder, but if not, then you should probably try something else first or send it in for repair, something like that. Basically what you have to do is have the body exposed like this with a solenoid like shown. Solenoid can be removed from the body, doesn't matter, whatever works. I prefer to keep it on just for stability myself. What you do is need to take soldering iron, soldering braid, and remove solder from the two sides of the switch, which is done like this. It's not hard to do. Flip this thing around. Do the other side. That's now removed. At this point, the switch is still stuck to the board by a small amount of solder between the pad and the board. So I'm going to take this knife and pry it up. I do this by squeezing the knife under the bottom edge, gently pushing up. It's pretty delicate work, so you got to be careful that you don't scratch any of the components around the board. If you do, then you'd have to replace those. So I'm just going to do that to the other side, since it's propped up already. And the switch is now angled up. I don't know if that's visible or not, but hopefully it is. The switch can now just be pulled off, throw it out. I'm going to take a new power switch, which looks something like that. Power switch has to be placed on the board so that it matches up with the white solder mask drawing on the top, or else you would run into problems with the power switch actuator. I won't go into that. I'm going to take some flux here and wet the pads and make sure that those are ready to go. Flux helps the solder to flow better, which is always good, much easier. I'm going to put the switch in position on top of the board. It's going to stay there for a second, and we'll get it better in position. Alright. I'm going to take solder here, and you need to hold the switch down with one finger while at the same time dropping a bit of solder on there. This is kind of hard to do in front of the camera, but I'm going to get it down in a second. The solder is flexible, so you can bend it into position, get it down. This is of course something easier to do if you have a friend or colleague that knows how to solder themselves. Alright, now I have that side done. I'm going to flip it around and do the other side. The switch is now down in place. I'm going to plug a lower board for testing into the upper board at this point. You can take your board out of your frame and test it, or you can hook up the frame to the solenoid just like normal, except without assembling it. This will make it easy to test. You probably want to do this before you reassemble the frame to the body, just because you'll have to disassemble it again. Plug that in. Make sure that's tight. And the switch works. Solenoid also works. So let's turn it off, unplug it, and you're done. The only other thing I'm going to mention is that you want to put the frame back on the body and make sure that the button is easy to push. Because if it's not, or if the actuator in the frame doesn't hit the button, then you're going to have to remove the switch again and move it back a little bit so that the button is actually actuated by the actuator, and at that point you'll be good. But I'll save that for a different video.